As the country commemorates Human Rights Day, President Cyril Ramaphosa has acknowledged that more needs to be done. Ramaphosa says government is committed to democracy, the rule of law and protection of human rights. He was speaking at the National Conference on 30 years of human rights on Gauteng's East End. The three-day conference will see key stakeholders reflecting on the work that has been done since South Africa's democratic dispensation. Let's now unpack this with Human Rights Commissioner Advocate Sandra Makoasha. Advocate Makoasha, good morning. Thank you so much for making time for us, and happy Human Rights Day to you. I want to start off here, though. Out of 10, how would you rate our human rights in South Africa?
Good morning to you and your viewers. Thank you for welcoming to the show. In rating South Africa out of 10 in respect of our human rights, I'd say that we're averaging out of 5.
Averaging around 5. Why would you say that?
The rationale behind it is that there's still a lot that needs to be done on the ground. Despite the fact that we have one of the best constitutions in South Africa, we've realized some of these rights in the Bill of Rights in promoting and protecting and monitoring these rights. However, we've not yet realized these rights for the most vulnerable members of our communities. I think just before you went on the ad break, you were speaking about being optimistic about the change in South Africa centering around human rights. And I'm one of those optimists who believe that we could change and ensure that the most vulnerable members of our communities are able to realize these human rights that are given to them in terms of just being human in the Bill of Rights.
Yeah. Where would you then say things have gone wrong? Because there was the dawn of the democratic dispensation, and this year we mark 30 years of this country celebrating its democracy, and we're going into an election. And year in, year out, during the election cycles, you get the promises that are made by political parties, including the governing party, which speaks to the fundamentals of the Bill of Rights. But where did we go wrong?
I think we went wrong both on the aspect between the relationship between government and its citizens, where we are affected by a number of factors, such as corruption, which has been one of the conversations that we've been having as a nation for the last 10 years, which has adversely affected the realization of rights at the ground. But also between us as citizens, when we fail to acknowledge that we as private citizens amongst each other have rights, and those rights must be realized and protected. There has been an increase in respect of individuals who have, you'll notice in the public space, on social media, said such such horrible things in respect of people's rights, and that also comes into play. So there are a number of factors such as the economy going down, which then results in poverty. Poverty is one of the greatest contributors to an unequal society, and when you have an unequal society, then those rights then are not fully realized, resulting in people not living the constitutional dream that we had in 1994.
Yeah. One of the delegates at that conference reflecting on the 30 years of our democracy was Dr. Makoasha, who is an ANC veteran. And he said that as far as he is concerned, I would like to say that bad governance is the root of all evil, the scourge confronting the country. Is that the view that the Human Rights Commission of South Africa also has when it comes to governance?
Not necessarily. Like I said, that there is a responsibility amongst us as citizens to respect each other's rights, and there's been an increase or a decline in us interacting and realizing each other's human rights. This can be given examples with the racial tensions in Groblersdal, the lack of understanding that certain things that belong in the past should not be part of the democratic era. However, we do acknowledge as the Human Rights Commission that bad governance is one of the contributing factors in us not realizing human rights after 30 years into democracy.
Okay. Then here's the other problem is there's been a lot of focus around water over the past few weeks, specifically in urban areas, and some people would have said that you would have never expected that urban areas will also be affected by the plight of the lack of availability of drinkable water. We have covered, for instance, stories of a lack of drinkable water in provinces such as Limpopo, provinces such as the Northwest. But now what we're finding is that provinces such as Gauteng, which have many urban areas, KwaZulu-Natal specifically in eThekwini, also affected by water provision. the failure of the state to ensure that there is drinkable water. However, though, you look at the census report and it says that there has been an increase in the number of people who have access to drinkable water. But what we're facing now is there's actually water shedding. So sometimes you do get the water and sometimes you don't. Advocate Makoasha, your reflection on that?
My reflection on that is that when we did the Mpumalanga report on water and sanitation, a number of factors were highlighted in that report. And it is correct that as a nation we are facing a water and sanitation crisis. One of those issues would be poor planning in respect of infrastructure. And in respect of infrastructure, it's upgrading those infrastructures, putting new infrastructures in place, and that goes to poor planning. We noted that there is a lack of interdepartmental collaboration, resulting in municipalities not fully planning for the increase in population. Also, we noted that the number of vacancies within government has resulted in people not being in the relevant spaces in order for them to fulfill their duties to provide water and sanitation. As well as, of course, they will say that the decline in the economy, which affects the budgetary, which results in budgetary constraints. The issue of water should not also be seen reflected from an urban area, but also that the rural communities are still drinking water with animals, and we need to then account for that and ensure that when we do make these reports, and which we have made a number of them, we then have government being held accountable, but at the same time having government coming up with actionable solutions. And we're still counting the clock in respect of the Mpumalanga provinces who are given a deadline of 90 days.
Okay. Then there is, speaking again about water and what has led the South African Human Rights Commission to go to the Supreme Court of Appeal to ensure that there is a court order that says that the Human Rights Commission's findings as well as its recommendations are binding. Why is that important? But then again, the High Court has found that actually no case has been made.
It's important to have the Human Rights Commission's directives and reports or recommendations binding. If we do not have that, essentially what the Human Rights Commission becomes is a watchdog with our teeth who just writes reports, and we're just being accounting or giving research numbers. It would then mean that the Human Rights Commission essentially becomes a non-profit organization that does not have the support and the support of the Constitution behind it and the judiciary to ensure that we hold people accountable and our recommendations are binding, just like the public protector's directives were found to be binding.
Yeah. What has been the difficulty with those recommendations not being implemented by the state, and also how does that lead to the undermining of the Commission, which essentially is a Chapter 9 institution, and its mandate is to support the democratic dispensation?
I think the difficulty in having people we made recommendations against to act according to those directives is that there is that misinterpretation that our directives and recommendations are non-binding and that we are not like the public protector. We're simply writing these to assist them in ensuring that they act in accordance. So there has been that difficulty, and we are working towards changing that perspective. As you said, we're going to court to litigate on that, but also we are then joined by other Chapter 9 institutions to ensure that when other Chapter 9 institutions do make recommendations and directives, then they're also binding on the parties.
Thank you so much for your time. That was the Human Rights Commissioner, Advocate Sandra Makoasha, joining us on a reflection on Human Rights Day.